Hey guys, this is Comic Uno and Comic Frontline, and today I'm doing Comic Uno episode 132. In this show I review all the comics I read this week in one show, and let's get started. We go worst pick of the week to best pick of the week, and this is a relatively short week, which is a good thing, because next week is going to be like a 28 comic week, but this week it is 16 comics, so let's get started. What was worst pick of the week? Number 16 was Green Arrow, issue 49. Did you guys guess it? Probably. If you know I read Green Arrow, and Green Arrow came out this week. And yeah, this just continues the dullness of what Green Arrow has been, that he's a werewolf now. And they sprinkle, like, some political stuff. It's like, oh, you know, like, Oliver's into politics. He's, the liberal side of the DC universe. Why not add that into the comics? And they kind of do, but they only do it just to do it. They don't really do much with it. So they just do it to mention it, I will say. But most of the issue is him just wolfing out and his sister finding him and saying, yeah, we need to find a cure. And then he just kind of rips his shirt off. He's like, yeah, we do. and that's what goes on. Like, there was no reason to rip his shirt off, but I'm hoping it was more of an inside joke because of Arrow, but sure. I will say the positive thing of this book, honestly, was the artwork. Even though he's a werewolf, it fit the style of the story they were trying to tell, so I like the artwork for the most part, but the story is just, it's out there, guys. I do not recommend Green Arrow. I am only picking it up because I am a huge Green Arrow fan, and I don't want to drop it, but it's getting there, guys. It's not getting any better. So Green Arrow issue 49 gets 2 stars, and that was number 16. We'll hopefully find out if issue 50 is a little bit better. Alright, moving on to number 15, which is Green Lantern, issue 49. And this was not a horrible book. The only horrible book this week really was Green Arrow. But this was just an okay book. We get to see how Jordan tried to... He gets a bit angry because of things that happened to his nephew. So he, fighting off these people, which is pretty much, I think it was the UN he was fighting, because all they do is talk. So he fought the UN, and the UN was being attacked by these, I guess, aliens, and they say he actually saves the UN in the long run. And in the end of the issue, his nephew is, out of his coma, and that's what's going on. So yeah, it's kind of the same thing with, oh, you had a little bit of a parallax ending, but the most of it I didn't really care about the adventure Hal was on. The stuff I cared about was the family aspect and what was going on with his nephew. Artwork was pretty good also, but kind of the same thing we've been seeing for the past couple issues. I don't think it really offered too much more than that. So Green Lantern issue 49 gets 3 stars, and that is number 15. Moving on to number 14, which I'm upset to see this so low once again, but that is Robin Hood ongoing issue 19. This is the penultimate issue to the end of this ongoing series, and I like this issue again. This was not a bad issue. We're getting into the point where they were just kind of okay issues, because there wasn't a lot of horrible issues this week, like I said, but with Robin Hood, I just felt like it was very wordy, and this really brings up to the point where I didn't care about the villains, and the villains weren't built up enough in this series, and now we're at that point. It's like, it's all about the villains and defeating them, and I just don't really care about them at this point. But the best parts are a lot of development for Marion in this issue. But once again, it's not too much about Marion and Robin, and not too much about Robin in this issue when it actually, is her series. So it was an okay issue. Again, best parts were Marion and kind of see her grow as a character, and some big events happen to her in this issue. So I gave this 3 stars. I didn't think it was the best second to last issue, but yeah, I was a little disappointed with it. Alright, so now we're moving on to number 13, which is another book that I was a bit disappointed with this week, which was Spider-Man issue 1. Now, this is a book I was actually most anticipated for this week because I'm a big Miles Morales fan. I really like the creative team for this book with Pichelli and Bendis creating Miles Morales' character. And somehow in this issue, Miles Morales was out of character. It was very weird. Miles was a ladies' man, and he just was flirting with this girl that was totally not in I guess you would think that he would flirt with, and because she was kind of snotty to him. And then, like, even like his reasoning for saving the world, there's this picture of him, of all these girls, like, kind of you know, loving him and having a crush on him. I'm like, that's not why Miles does it, you know, that's not why he's Spider-Man. So I thought that was a bit out of character for him. Even the way he talks to his parents felt a little out of character. So I would say the Miles Morales parts felt out of character. The Spider-Man parts were pretty good though. I mean, most of it was just action. And there's this villain who's Mephisto's brother, and you know, that kind of brings the Ultimate Universe aspect to the issue, but not really. I think they totally could have talked about more about the Ultimate Universe and leaving that side of his home and how that feels. Didn't really talk about that in this issue, so that was disappointing. And then also, Miles's facial features looked really off. He didn't really look like Miles Morales, and even his facial expressions I didn't really like in this issue. So that's another thing I definitely felt that was off in this issue. So, but I will say the highlight of this was definitely Ganke and Miles' relationship, their friendship. That was definitely the best part of the issue. But other than that, this was a pretty disappointing issue. Even with a disappointing cliffhanger with Amazing Spider-Man, you know, Peter, he's just like, Miles, what are you doing? You know, or not in that words, but the words that he uses is, let's see, what did you do? And that's exactly what he says. So, yeah, it was just kind of weird. I don't know if I really care for Peter Parker and Miles to have, you know, them not agreeing with each other right now. I don't think we needed that for the first arc, but, or maybe there should have been a little bit more build up to that. I feel like Peter definitely wouldn't just question him like that in the end. He would want an explanation from Miles before he was questioning him. They're like, oh, of course you did this. Miles, you definitely, you know, hurt Captain America and all these Avengers, where he didn't do that. So, it was a little weird of an ending. Sorry to talk so much about Spider-Man, but yeah, I was disappointed with this issue, and I gave that 3 stars. Alright, so now I think we're up to number 12 already. Yes, so number 12 is Invincible Iron Man, issue 6. This is kind of the lowest I think Invincible Iron Man has been, because I love the series, but it is a different artist, which, the art wasn't bad, it just kind of wasn't my style. I thought it was a bit too dark. I'm not a big fan of this kind of darker style of artwork, but it worked for the story it was trying to tell. But I felt this was honestly kind of a filler issue. You didn't really need it. You had the War Machine story, which I thought they could have done a lot more with, but I did like the ending to the War Machine story where, you know, he's hunting the ninjas, and he thinks it's one of the guys who's the ninja, and these 2 girls that just are like his girlfriends, you think, and then you find out they were actually the ninjas, so I thought that was kind of a cool twist on, you know, a trope we've seen a billion times in comics, especially in Iron Man comic, so I thought that was pretty cool. But the rest of the issue, it's just like Dr. Doom talking to Tony about the same thing. Oh, you don't trust me, but you really should trust me. That's kind of the story going on. Nothing else really being progressed with the issue, so Invincible Iron Man issue 6 gets 3.5 stars. Not a bad issue, still some fun stuff that happened, but could have definitely progressed the story a lot more than it did in this issue. So I gave that 3.5 stars, and that is number 12. So moving on to number 11, which is Captain Marvel issue 2. Again, not a bad issue, just, I feel I have a connection, obviously, to Captain Marvel already. I think they characterize her very well, but the rest of the cast I don't really care about, and that's something they really need to build in this issue. Because I've never been an Alpha Flight fan, so I really don't know these characters that well, and I would like to care about them. Even though you see that they have a little bit of spunk, they do feel very two-dimensional, and it seems like this book is going to be heavily, also, kneeling, or, I would say for our enjoyment, is definitely reliable on the supporting character also, because they're a big part of this book. So, yeah, that's something that I definitely need to be work on here. But I did like the cliffhanger where we get to see these aliens scratch Captain Marvel and then she faints. So something happened there. So overall, it wasn't a bad story. I liked the adventure. I liked Captain Marvel in this issue, but the supporting cast definitely needs more development in this book. Also, artwork was really well done too. I think it fits the story very well. So Captain Marvel issue 2 gets 3.5 stars. Alright, so what number are we up to now? I think we're up to 11. We're up to number 10, which is The Amazing Spider-Man, issue 7. Kind of a forgettable issue for The Amazing Spider-Man. It's more with Mr. Negative, more with Cloak and Dagger, and it's another person betraying Peter Parker, because we have his engineer who is working with this person because she has to save her mom, and to do so kind of betrays Spider-Man at the same time. So yeah, that's what's going on. It doesn't really progress the story too much after that, which is a little disappointing. So, and also the Mr. Negative stuff, it was interesting, and I guess it was cool to see Cloak and Dagger again, but yeah, I could have definitely used more in this issue. And I feel like I say that with like every Amazing Spider-Man issue, because the only one that's really impressed me was the Human Torch issue, because I feel like that was the most you know, related to Spider-Man. It's still very corporate, and I'm okay with that, but I want a likable quality to this corporate section of Peter Parker's new life, and I just haven't found that yet. So, Amazing Spider-Man issue 7 gets 3.5 stars, and that is number 10. Moving on to number 9, which is a book I'm actually more impressed with than I usually am, and that is Batman and Robin Eternal, issue 18. I thought this was a pretty good issue. There's definitely still parts that lag in this story. I don't think we needed this many issues to tell this story, but we do have some interesting scenes with Harper Row finding out what Cassandra Cain did and a little bit more about Cassandra Cain, and that actually the mother herself wanted Harper Row to be the ultimate Robin, and I thought that was interesting, because I mean, we all thought that Harper Row was going to be the new Robin way back when Damian died, so I think it's kind of a cool poke at that, I would say. The artwork was pretty good. It was okay. It's honestly average, but it works for a weekly series, because I know obviously it's going to be a little bit more rushed. The parts I didn't like is the obvious artist change, where their eyes look like so much smaller than they should look. Even their masks look a little smaller, so proportions definitely could be better in certain portions of this issue. But overall, I actually thought this was one of the better issues of Batman and Robin Eternal. Still didn't blow my mind. A lot of things I kind of already guessed, but still an interesting issue that at least progresses the plot a little bit more. So Batman and Robin Eternal issue 18 gets 3.5 stars, and that is number 9. So now we're moving on to number 8, which is Detective Comics, issue 49, which I'm really glad to see this book up high again, because I'm actually enjoying this arc. Again, it's not the most perfect arc in the world. The actual mystery is a little boring, but the parts I really like is that James Gordon is a detective, and he's actually being Batman. And also I do like his connection to his daughter, obviously, you know, mentioning Barbara a lot. And there was this cool scene where we find out that the villain stole this kind of college kid and dressed her up as a knight, and I thought that was a really cool scene. Artwork also is pretty well done. It's a good style for a classic type modern Batman story. So overall, I like that this feels modern, even though I will say it feels like I've seen it a billion times. It is seeing an idea you've seen a billion times with Bruce done with Jim Gordon, and that's why I like this arc. And something I feel like we've needed with Jim Gordon. So I gave that 3.5 stars, and that was number 8. Moving on to number 7, which is Tomboy, issue 3, which is a book from Action Labs / Danger Zone, which is a portion of Action Labs. And I really like this book. I definitely recommend Tomboy if you're not reading it. It's a magical girl type book. But what's interesting is that with this issue, we definitely learn a little bit more about our supporting characters. We learn about our main character's best friend, who's the daughter of the DA, now that the police think that she killed these police officers because of her connection to our main character's best friend who died. So that's interesting. But my favorite part actually is our main character's relationship with her grandfather, knowing that the grandfather kind of did similar things to her and telling her you have to kill people and we actually get a backstory of why he thinks that she has to kill people. And I'm really excited for the training scenes between them. Now, the reason this book is not higher is that there is a lot of exposition. It's a lot about the grandfather explaining, this was my life, this is why I did what I did, and it's a lot of pages of that, but obviously needed pages that you need for the story to understand why the grandfather is okay with their, you know, his 14-year-old granddaughter to kill people and be like this vigilante. But I'm really interested to see where it goes, and I like this ghost aspect also. There's a lot of interesting elements and original elements to the story, and artwork's well done, so I'm definitely excited to see what the next issue is about. And Tomboy issue 3 gets 3.5 stars, and that is number 7. Alright, now we're moving on to number 6, which is Batgirl, issue 48. Now, this is a book I'm really torn about, and honestly, this wouldn't be as high if this was a week that wasn't so moderate, because this is a very moderate week for comics, but yeah, Batgirl, tornness of it is that I have a fun time reading it because it is Barbara Gordon, and there are fun elements to this book, and even, you know, the Black Canary and Barbara team up was a lot of fun. I also like Frankie as a character, but there's a lot of predictability to this book too. We find out that the main villain who's targeting Barbara's brain is the random guy that's been staying with her that was her best friend from middle school. I thought that was very predictable. Also, parts I don't really like that has been a continuous thing I don't really like about Batgirl is not that they de-aged her, is that they kind of depowered her. I feel with Barbara, a lot of times she just kind of hides behind the other person fighting, which is weird because Barbara obviously is a very experienced fighter, and I don't feel like they show that in this series enough. Because in this issue, it's more, I mean, I understand there's a lot going on with Barbara in this issue, but it's more of her hiding behind Black Canaries, like, yeah, fight my battles, you know? And I feel like Barbara's never been that type of character, so that's definitely the negatives of the issue, but I did have a fun time with it, and I like the cliffhanger of her going unconscious, and them maybe having to go into her brain, which will be interesting, because that is an aspect I liked with this new version of Batgirl. So, Batgirl issue 48, once again, gets 3.5 stars. I feel like that's the most common rating I give this book, but it always just lands in the 3.5 star zone, so that gets number 6. Alright, so now I am moving on to number 5, which is Spidey, issue 3, which is a really fun issue, you know? I will say there's previously been better issues of Spidey, but I like this. It's Spider-Man fighting the Lizard. It's also Spider-Man getting a new job as a pizza boy, which really reminded me of Spider-Man 2, the movie. There's actually a lot of aspects of this book that reminded me of Amazing Spider-Man, the movie, the first one with Andrew Garfield, with all the lizards, and then you have the pizza part, which was very much Spider-Man 2 with Tobey Maguire, so I enjoyed that. And I feel like this is a great book to kind of learn about the origins of Spider-Man and his villains if you don't really know a lot about them. I think this is a great book to do that in a new, fresh way. So if you don't know much about Lizard, they explain it here. But also they offer a new story for people that do know about these stories, like me, who's a big Spider-Man fan. Aspects I really like, you know, his relationship with Gwen and that kind of new dynamic. Even though he's had a relationship with Gwen in the past, this does feel like a different, more modern Gwen, and kind of feels a little similar to Spider-Gwen, but with a mix of old Gwen from the 616 / whatever they're calling their Earth now. So yeah, it was a cute issue. Artwork fits, I feel. Like, I usually don't like this artist's style, but I think it does fit for this Spider-Man book, and I gave it 4 stars. I thought it was a solid read, and I had fun with it. So that is number 5. Moving on to number 4, which is 8th Seal, issue 3. Now, actually, I think this is the first time this book has made top 5, but I've enjoyed it. I will say the artwork is kind of plain, and that's been a complaint, but the story itself is really interesting. The First Lady having, like, this monster inside her, which is the 8th Seal, and her going, like, crazy, but is she crazy? Like, I'm curious about what this world is, and it seems like all these senators know about it, and I like the dynamic between, I guess he was a senator, one of, you know, the higher Washington people, and his daughter, who you think would be complete opposites, but they're part of the same cult that is part of the 8th Seal. And also another part I really liked about this issue was when she's on national TV talking about, you know, education. She goes crazy and talks about killing people, and I'm like, oh my god, that's so awkward, but it's so awesome that they did this in this comic. So I'm really curious to see more about the world of 8th Seal, and I thought this was a really good progression to the series. So I gave that number 4, and that was a 4-star book. So that's 8th Seal from IDW Comics if you haven't read it yet. Alright, moving on to number 3, which is Nova, issue 4, which is great to see this in top 5 also, because I haven't had Nova in my top 5 in a while. But yeah, I thought this was a solid issue where we get to see Nova team up with the younger portion of the all-new, all-different Avengers, Miles and Miss Marvel, who are more in character in this book than actual all-new, all-different Avengers, which, if you saw our Comic You Know episode last week, I didn't love that issue. But yeah, in this issue, I like that it's Nova. You know, it's him dealing with Mole Man and his son, and then relating it to his situation with his father. And he feels like he's a bit of a screw-up, so it does feel like a very emotional, psychological issue for him, and his friend's trying to help him out, but he doesn't really know how to explain it to them. And also, artwork I felt like was really well done. It fit the story well. Usually I feel with the helmet, it could be a little bit better, but I thought the action worked very well with this issue. And I also really like the emotional part in the end of the issue. Again, when he's just slamming everything onto the floor and he just doesn't really know what to do with the future of being Nova. So I gave this 4 stars. I thought this was a very solid issue. A good homage to that classic Fantastic Four cover. So that was cool. Alright, so moving on to number 2, a book that I was really impressed with this week, and I'm glad is getting better and better, and that is A-Force issue 2. I think this is the highest A-Force has ever been on my list, but I really enjoyed this issue. It was a lot of fun, where we get to see Singularity, which has been a really fun character since this first issue. Not as much in the A-Force miniseries, but I really like her in this new series. And her seeing her friends not be friends, and it's her going to who was her best friend, Nico, and Nico not knowing her at all. And I thought they stayed true a lot to these characters' origins, especially Nico, mentioning her runaways days and talking about only being able to use a spell once. And I love the reference of her saying, yeah, you know, she gets punched and she needs to heal herself, so she says it in a different language, and she's like, oh, what does that mean? It means heal in another language, and I need that spell a lot. And Singularity says, oh, well, how about when you run out? And she's like, well, that would be very bad. So I love that she's using all these different spells, and I like that kind of unique twist to Nico's power that they said. Another part I was surprisingly really liked too was the Dazzler part, because I wouldn't have liked it at first where it's just like, I'm always angry, because Dazzler was never angry, until recently. But a Singularity saying you're hiding something behind your anger, and I'm curious to see if they're going to explore more of Dazzler, and it is cool to see Dazzler again. I'm a big fan of Dazzler, so not so much her new version, but it's cool that they're adding her in this book, and that she's like part of a roller derby. But there's so much funness to this issue. Even She-Hulk, you know, and I feel like everyone has their own personality, and that really is portrayed well. And love the cover too, them just like eating in Japan. So I had a really fun time with this issue. I gave A-Force issue 2 4 stars, and definitely probably the best A-Force issue I've read out of even from the Secret Wars miniseries. I'm really picking up that series. All right, so what was pick of the week? Number 1 was Paper Girls issue 5. Now, I'm so disappointed we have to wait so much longer for issue 6 for the new art. We had to wait until June. That is such a long time from now. But I really like this issue because we definitely get the fantastic of this issue, where we learn that the guys that kidnapped Erin, who we thought were bad guys, are not bad guys, and they like use these bugs to heal Erin. And then it's the girls trying to figure out, like, what do we do? Where's Erin? And then they run into these apple people, and we still don't know much about them. Are they like the apple that we know, or are they like totally different and they're adults? Does that mean something? So is it like teenagers versus adults? We'll have to find out. But the big cliffhanger is that we see the girls, except KJ, we don't know where she went, go to the future and meet Erin of the future, who's also listening, I just realized, to an Apple iPhone, or at least an iPod of some sort. So that's also interesting to reference that. But yeah, I really like this issue. I love the cliffhanger. I can't wait for the next issue. I guess my only complaint with this issue is that I feel that they throw a lot at you at once, a lot of information, that I kind of wish they either spread apart, or honestly you're probably going to have to read it more than once to understand what's going on. throughout the stories. So, yeah, Paper Girls issue 5 is my pick of the week. I gave it 4 stars. Sadly, there wasn't anything over 4 stars this week. I thought it was kind of a mediocre week, but still enjoyed a good amount of comics too. So, Paper Girls issue 5 was my pick of the week, but let me know in the comments below. What was your worst pick of the week? What was your best pick of the week? And everything in between. Of course, guys, I'll have Comic Uno episode 133 next week. And this is Comic Uno and Comic Frontline. Don't forget to follow me on Twitter. Don't forget to like my Facebook page. Also, description below, there's links for my comic book, Like Father, Like Daughter. And don't forget to like the Facebook page of Like Father, Like Daughter. And I'll see you guys later. Bye.